as the NFL playoff teams get ready for the biggest games of their season, the rest get ready for the biggest decisions that they will have to make. Some just impact the next few months, and many impact the next few years. So, what are those decisions that have to be made? Let's preview the offseason for the teams that weren't quite good enough to get into the NFL postseason. Selfishly now, I want to talk about my team as we talk about eliminated teams for probably the last time in the next little bit until coaching changes are finalized and everything. But we're going to run through the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs and what is next for them this offseason, and going in draft order until we can't. Up first, obviously, the team on the clock right now in the NFL draft, the Las Vegas Raiders. They have an estimated $84.1 million in salary cap space. They have the first overall pick, and this needs part that I'm going to do for every team. This one's easy. Basically everything. I've made the joke before, but it's not entirely a joke. They have about 3 NFL players on their team, with Genty, Bowers, and Crosby. I'm obviously exaggerating, but not by as much as I should be. This team needs basically everything. Quarterback is obviously at the top of that list, but they desperately need help on the offensive line. They need any wide receiver who can do anything, and they need anyone who can cover anyone else's wide receivers who can do anything. This is a team with significant holes, and I understand and will understand if they go Mendoza at the top of this draft. If it were me, I don't think you can do that. They just have too many needs on every aspect, or in every aspect of this game, and we have seen how often teams have traded out of this number one spot, been able to accumulate quite a bit of draft capital, and then go off and fill up their roster. We will see it this weekend with the Chicago Bears. Now, we'll also see it with the Carolina Panthers, albeit in different scenarios. But I think the Raiders need that right now. They are not a team that is a quarterback away. They are a team that is a quarterback away from still needing everything else on the field. And you can look at what happened in New England and see the quick turnaround, or see what Jackson Dart has meant to progressing the future of the New York Giants, and figure it out and see that, like, you can still do this. So if Mendoza is the pick, I'm not going to be lighting tables on fire. I'm not going to be running around and just like hammering everyone and just being really upset about this. It is one of the needs. And if you think that he is the best player available, then you go out and make that pick. But I feel like there are a few teams that are a little bit closer to just being a quarterback away that you could probably get some pretty good draft capital coming back. Like, you are really hoping that the Jets just fall in love with Mendoza and desperately have to move up and get him. And they have quite a bit of draft capital to work with. So maybe you can kind of dip into that a little bit and try to fix this roster. So if it were me today, I don't think I'm going quarterback for the Raiders. I am trying to trade out of that spot and accumulate a number of picks. If they have to stick and pick on the day, it probably does make the most sense to go with the quarterback there and then try to figure out everything else around it. They have $84 million in cap space to try to put together an offensive line and some kind of a defense that can help this kid out. But this would be an atrocious situation for him to go into. And more often than not, when it's the number one overall pick, they do get thrown right in. But I think it would be beneficial to have Geno at least start the season for this team and try to work your way through it. Because you look like we're going to be talking about Tennessee very, very soon. And I don't think this was a banner year for the development of Cam Ward when Tennessee took him number one. And I think Tennessee was in a better spot to bring a quarterback in than the Raiders were. So the Raiders have a lot of work to do. And yes, a quarterback would check off at least one of the boxes, but I think they have an opportunity to check off many, many more. In the chat, Conrad, QB has to be the first priority, but I don't think they go Mendoza. If I am Oakland, I mean Vegas, I go more if I don't ship that pick. Yeah, like that is going to be a discussion as well. But between the two, Mendoza certainly has an interesting personality going on with him. Moore has a very skilled upside, obviously. So it is, I think that one's going to come down to preference. And just admittedly, I haven't watched as much of either of those kids yet. Like that's going to be that's going to be what a lot of my time is spent on over the next little bit, since I'm a little invested in it now. So I do think that you can. And look, maybe there's a team that falls in love with either of them. It's like, well, I mean, look, we kind of think we're going to take them, and someone leapfrogs. Like, you are hoping that teams really fall in love with these kids and can jump up and take them. But yeah, like I think it is a style preference right now, but I'm going to have to do more looking into that at this particular time. Anyway, up next, the New York Jets. They will be drafting second with $58.6 million in cap space. And again, they are a team that is not burdened by such things as, oh, but we have this guy here. They don't have a quarterback for the future or a backup quarterback of the future. They have no one in a secondary, as is noticed by being the first team in the history of the sport to not get an interception at any point in the NFL season. Their top running back is probably on his way out the door. They don't really have much of an offensive line, and their leading wide receiver didn't play a game after November. So they have a number of issues that they need to iron out as well. I do think they're in a touch of a better spot than the Raiders are at this particular time. They can just draft the other one. And if they want to move out of that spot, they're almost in a better place, because whoever gets one, they're probably going quarterback. But then all of a sudden now, like, there feels like there's a bit of a delta between these top two, and then the Alabama kid after that. Although, I mean, some people like him as well. But the Jets could also take advantage of some desperate teams. But as we mentioned before, they're already in a pretty good spot draft capital wise. They have the Colts pick from this year in the Sauce Gardner trade, and they get the Cowboys, probably the Cowboys pick for next year from the Quinn and Williams trade. And I believe they got an extra second round pick in that one as well. So I think the Jets are in a pretty sharp spot at this particular time. Conrad pointing out, unfortunately for them, there's no DBs that project in the top 10 other than Downs. Yeah, that could be a little bit further on, or that could be a free agency thing as well. So yeah, like for them, the offensive line isn't spectacular, but I think they're in a better spot when you look at having Garrett Wilson, and at least now you can pretend you have Breece Hall. We'll see what they end up going with, but you at least have somewhat of a usable foundation for a quarterback to go into if they go with either of the quarterbacks at that spot. I could see them trying to take a bit of a swing. ESPN in their offseason preview had them being the Kyler Murray team. They go and make a trade for Kyler and just use this draft capital to try to solve things that way. So they are, I mean, they have to come out of this offseason with a new quarterback, because they don't have one. Otherwise, it's going to be a weird running back wildcat thing all season. Like they don't have one at this time. So whether it's a big trade or what, but they're in a pretty good spot given the draft capital that they have right now. It's just, again, they have a lot of needs on this roster. And they're another team that I think a lot of people are pretty surprised that they're keeping the coach around as well. One team that didn't, the Arizona Cardinals. They did not keep the coach. So that is part of the offseason game plan with an estimated $14.5 million in salary cap space. The first thing they need to do is figure out what they're doing at quarterback. Jacoby Brissett came in, made the offense look competent, but lost every football game that he played, which is only slightly worse than Kyler, who won, I think, 3 games for them this season. So not a good year at the quarterback spot for them. But you look at the rest of the roster, they have a number of okay running backs. They can piece together a decent running back room. They have Michael Wilson turned out to be a phenomenal asset as a wide receiver. McBride set records as a pass catcher. The defense certainly has some issues. And like that one, again, they just need defensive talent, whether it be in the secondary or on that defensive line. They were able to make a couple of moves that bolstered the defense over the last little bit, but it certainly didn't get it to a point of even being a league average defense in the NFL. So they're another one that has some holes to fill. They need to address things on the offensive line, but quarterback is the decision that they need to make at this time. And yeah, to Conrad's point, they're hoping one of the two quarterbacks fall to them in the draft. Like they are hoping that the Jets just, you know what, we've fallen in love with player X. A lot of offensive line, or a lot of teams need an offensive lineman, and I don't know if there is necessarily, like, there are a couple that people are liking, but those looked like they were more back part of the top 10 than front part of the top 10. But yeah, they are hoping that the Raiders just don't go quarterback, the Jets just don't go quarterback or whatever. But yeah, a quarterback falling to them, I think, would be a perfect scenario at that point. I would be surprised if Kyler's their quarterback coming out of this season. So that's something they're just going to have to try to figure out. And if it's Kyler to pick a team for a first round pick, getting back into it, trying to address some stuff on the offensive line, then maybe. They do have to do a little bit more of their work here at the draft because they only have $14 million in salary cap space. Obviously, it's the NFL. You can mess with that all you want, but they need to have a bit more of an efficient draft that gets them in that spot. But you can see, like, they are really far away in the NFC West when you look at the three teams from that division making the playoffs, and all three of them having a case for the number one seed going into the last couple of weeks of the season. So Arizona, I would anticipate that Kyler is not the QB there. If the two at the top end up going to the Jets and the Raiders or whoever's in those spots, do they just go with the kid out of Alabama and roll with him that way? If they've moved on from Kyler, we'll see. It depends on what you would get back. It's probably just some draft capital and all that. But I think they control a lot this offseason because they have one of the more intriguing quarterback trade chips, unless Cincinnati ends up going nuclear with Joe Burrow, which I did a video on before. Some people got very upset about it, but he seemed unhappy, so maybe that ends up being the case. But for now, Kyler and the Arizona Cardinals are an interesting test case. And the difference, I think, between an NFL offseason and a really good NFL and exciting offseason. The Tennessee Titans will pick fourth with an estimated cap space of $77 million. Their needs, at least they've got the quarterback. Maybe. It's just some of the other stuff that needs to be figured out. They've spent a lot of draft capital on the offensive line over the last few years. It's an offensive line that's not perfect, but developing. They need a playmaker. They need someone for Cam Ward to throw the football to. And there are a couple of them in this draft. Maybe a Brandon Ayuk is intriguing to them at wide receiver. Or maybe they go all out and try to get George Pickens, free agent, out of the Dallas Cowboys. But they need someone to catch the ball and get open for Cam Ward. I said it going into this year. I don't think this team is that far away. Defensively, they were quite a bit worse than I was expecting them to be. But like, if you get a number one receiver in there, then all of a sudden, A.O. Manor as a number two, doesn't feel that bad. And if they keep Okonkwo, who I will keep banging the drum for, I think he's a good tight end, and with Spears, potentially Pollard, like, there's some upside there. They need something on the pass rush as well, but yeah, I think playmaker, wide receiver. Conrad saying, go wide receiver. I like Tate over Tyson. Yeah, I think wideout is probably where they would go. And I think for the third off season in a row, I think they try to make a big splash in free agency. Again, I don't think they're that far away, but there are obvious needs here for the Titans if they want to compete in a suddenly competitive division. New York Giants up next. They'll have the fifth pick after winning a couple of games down the stretch. Estimated cap space, $21.2 million. Obviously, they have got the quarterback thing figured out. There is some concern about Malik Neighbors, who is apparently still needing assistance in the whole walking thing, with cane and crutches being spotted over the last little bit, which, if you're looking at regular timelines, not awesome when you're hoping that this guy is ready in time for September. It feels like the timeline's a little bit off, but incredibly talented human being, and who knows, right? So speculating on that would be maybe a little bit off base. These are professional athletes. Human bodies are different. I think he will be fine. And so you got the quarterback. Have to feel pretty good about the running back room with Tracy and Scadaboo. Obviously, that was a pretty traumatic injury a season ago. We will see what he has. But overall, like, bigger picture, running back they're pretty okay at. If they keep Wan'Dale Robinson, like, it's not a receiving room that's like, okay, we're set, but they're okay. And then you have a couple of big guys on the pass rush, but you still need some big boys in New York. Offensive line, I think, is a desperate need for this football team. And the interior of the defensive line. We think Abdul Carter's going to figure things out on the edge. Brian Burns, I don't think, forgot how to play football either, but they need some stuff up the middle to solidify that line, and probably some help in the secondary as well. But I think the biggest need for the New York Giants are the big boys, that either offensive line or defensive line. I'm with you, Conrad. I think that they'll probably go on the defensive side of the football and try to figure out some offensive line issues through free agency. They've probably missed out on an opportunity to make a big move back trade to get a bunch of assets, but you like at least a bit of the foundation that has been started there with Dart and Neighbors and Scadaboo and Abdul Carter. It's just now you need to continue to solidify on the offensive line and build up that defense as well. The defense was a train wreck this season for both New York teams. At least the Giants got some interceptions this year, but the Giants have some way to go with this team, but they're of the teams we've talked about so far, they're at least in the best situation. Up next, the Cleveland Browns, with their negative $65 million in salary cap space, picking 6th overall. They also need to figure out who the head coach is, as Kevin Stefanski is on his way out the door. I've seen some people talking about them maybe going quarterback here. I wouldn't. Shedeur, we've talked about him ad nauseum. Shedeur was never a year one guy. He was never, ever going to be starter from day one, rookie of the year candidate, which was why it was such a complex situation, because you had a guy whose name far outweighed his immediate ability. I think there is potential there that he could turn into something, but it wasn't going to be this year. He was a work in progress. It's just because of what his name was. If you drafted him 2nd overall or whatever it was going to be, then that was going to be very difficult to manage the star power of that and keep him out of the lineup. But I think he was fine. Like, he at least, the trains were moving on time at various different points in this offense. So I wouldn't be sniffing quarterback right now. I think you let him roll with it and give him a little bit more to work with. And then if it's not it, it's not it. And you can adjust then, and you'll be in a spot where you can draft high again and make that move. But I think they have significantly better issues than quarterback. Yes, Conrad, in Shedeur we trust. I think he's going to be fine. Do I see him hoisting the Lombardi Trophy and being a Super Bowl MVP? Probably not. Obviously, he could win a Super Bowl, but is he going to be best player on a Super Bowl team? Probably not. But can he get this team to competitive in a division? Absolutely he can. Just need some help around him. They need offensive line help really, really badly out there. That is something that obviously they need to address, and they need any kind of pass catcher to help out. Jerry Jeudy ain't it. They have some talent at running back with Judkins and with Sampson. Harold Fannin Jr. turned into a thing this year at tight end. They need wide receiver help. So if there is, like the Titans, if they don't go wide receiver, then a really good one is falling to you. If they do go wide receiver, then a pretty good one is falling to you. But they need some help at receiver. I think the big thing would be the offensive line. Try to address that. And then maybe try to get, would Brandon Ayuk come in on a shorter prove-it deal with the Cleveland Browns and be that guy to help out with Shedeur? Maybe. That could work. But I think offensive line has to be the main priority. And again, they're going to have a couple of picks in the first round here because of the trade they made for with Travis Hunter and all of that at the end at the draft a season ago. So I think they're in an okay-ish spot. It's not a great football team, but I think they do have a little bit of wiggle room now to actually improve this football team over the next little bit. We have Luna Frost saying, hi, what's up? And then asking about some art for the channel. I appreciate the offer, but no, we're okay for right now. And Conrad saying there's not a lot separating the top 3 wide receivers in all honesty. So yeah, a good wide receiver probably going to be available to them. We'll see about what's happening on the offensive line. Again, this is right around the time where you start to get more comfortable with drafting a couple of those kids. Again, I have a bit more work I need to do on a lot of those before I can confidently come on here and blibbity blobbity blue, and then ignore a lot of it when I eventually end up being wrong anyway. But I think they're in a better spot than we would assume the Cleveland Browns are in right now. It's just we've been saying that about them for a really, really long time. Next up, Washington Commanders. They come in with $51.2 million in salary cap space. Thank gosh for those rookie contracts for quarterbacks. Obviously, this year did not go well for the Washington Commanders as Jaden Daniels got beat up and injured. So offensive line might help. And then defense is an area that they need to improve. They were able to smoke and mirrors a lot of the defense a couple of seasons ago, but it's an old defense. It's an unathletic defense. It's a bad defense. So they have some work that they need to do there now. It has been pretty offense heavy for what we have discussed so far. I think like offensive pieces wise, obviously like the number one player for a lot of teams in this draft is the running back out of Notre Dame. I mean, maybe. They could, right? Like they need a lot of athleticism and help on the defensive side of the football. But if they want to go the Raider way, when they went with Ashton Genty a season ago, if they just want to draft the kid from Notre Dame and roll with that at running back, Rodriguez is fine. McCroskey Merritt is fine, but they're not game breakers. If you get a potential one there and just, okay, we're going to shoot it out in this, I could see them going that direction and then try to piece together defensive stuff later. But there's an opportunity also to get one of the better defensive players in this draft because everyone ahead of them is very, very offensive heavy at this particular time. So unless there is a surprise early on, I think there is a chance that they go running back here. But to Conrad's point, like they need an edge rusher really bad. They just like I put for my needs for them front seven and secondary, which is all of it. Like they need athleticism and they need talent on the defensive side. But yes, in 2026 football, pass rusher is where they need to go first to try to upset the apple cart there at least a little bit. You saw how good Cleveland could be with one very good pass rusher. Not that Myles Garrett's popping up in this draft, but you can change things pretty quick if you can get that high level pass rusher out there. So it's just, are they going to be tantalized by something that is a bit of a secondary need at running back with there being a high level running back prospect on the board, or do they actually stick with what they actually need and build it out that way? But they got some money to spend this offseason, but it is basically a full rebuild on the defensive side of the football out in DC. At number 8, it's New Orleans, perpetually in salary cap hell as they are at minus $26.5 million in cap space. Hello, Toxic, in the Twitch chat. Welcome. Happy to have you in here. Yes, New Orleans, they at least have the quarterback figured out to a point where they can fix other things first. They don't have to go super quarterback heavy here and then, okay, let's try to piece it together. Shuck, I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback, but he's at least good and at least serviceable. So now it's about building around him. Conrad mentioned in the chat that the wide receivers that are here, the top 3, are basically like 1A, 1B, 1C. This would be the third team that we've brought up that could reasonably select a wide receiver. If that falls to them, do they just, okay, yeah, cool, roll with it. But again, they need the big boys. As Booker T would say in WWE, no bread, no water, just meat. They need the big guys up front, offensive line and defensive line. They got a few players aging out on the defensive side. A defense that was surprisingly good. I mean, that was New Orleans in general, surprisingly good this season. It's funny, go back to the preview things, be like, okay, New Orleans is definitely waiting for Arch Manning in this year's draft. And instead, they were better than people thought. And Arch Manning, significantly worse than people thought. And not even coming out in the draft now. So, funny how things can change over a few months. Yeah, it's the big boys up front. They need offensive line. They need defensive line. But they also need a secondary playmaker behind Olave. I think they still have some interesting options at running back. We'll see what happens with Alvin Kamara. But they had a couple of young players step in behind him. So I don't know if they go running back here, but I could see a wide receiver coming in to try to solidify things for this quarterback. Or if we've had a run of not offensive linemen, all of a sudden we're looking at the best O-lineman in the draft, I could see New Orleans making that play as well. But the Saints in an okay spot. I will say, though, this is why I hated the kicking the can down the road thing with all the salary cap issues that they were having. Because now you want to start taking off. You got the quarterback, at least for now, right? Now is the time to build around him. It is not the time to have negative $26.5 million in salary cap space, but they've just kicked so many problems with the cap down the road. If they would have just ate it, and now maybe you don't get the shuck season last year if you have a substantially worse football team, but if they would have just ate it last year or a couple of years ago and just accepted, like, yeah, we're going to suck and it's going to be rough, but we're going to get out of the spot and we're going to be able to build a winner coming off of this, they'd be in obviously a much better spot at this time. So it is a lack of foresight from this team that has them in not as good of a position as you would hope they could be. Again, it's the NFL salary cap. You can manage this, that, and the other thing, and it'll be fine. But as it sits right now, they just have a lot of work to do at a time where you would really like to not have that much work to do. This is about a month earlier than we've done the Kansas City Chiefs offseason preview in the last few years. But the Chiefs will have the 9th pick in the draft, $58.4 million. So yeah, if Samson from Alabama's here, you just draft quarterback, right? Like that's the obvious need, of course. Probably not. But this is a team that, for all the struggles they had, I still think it's a talented football group. Rashee Rice, obviously some issues there off of the field, and then some injury problems and all of that. I still think a really good receiver there. I do think that they have a little bit of work to do around it. Like bringing in a wide receiver, another skilled pass catcher, I think makes a lot of sense there. I think adding a pass rusher to go along with Chris Jones and George Karlaftis would probably help as well as those guys start to age and trying to build around that. Yes, toxic. Not a lot of tears shed for the spot that the Kansas City Chiefs are in right now. I would be, I think a lot of people are just, oh no, Kansas City has to pick here. I think offensive line, Kansas City is fine. They could probably use a bit of solidifying there. But again, if one of the good wide receivers in this draft has fallen to them, this is a unique opportunity for Kansas City to be picking this high in the draft. So go out and try to get that high-level playmaker. Or if the draft falls to you, a really good pass rusher could be exactly what this team needs as well. But again, it's a very, very strong unit and one where just a lot went wrong for this team this season. They are not without flaw. Like it is not stunning that they are here. This was a well-earned 9th overall pick in the draft for Kansas City. But it's not New Orleans. It's not even Cincinnati, who we're going to talk about after this. Like they are, of the teams we've talked about, obviously, when you have one of the most talented quarterbacks in human history, you're in a good spot. They're obviously in a good spot still. It's just there is work to do for Kansas City. In the chat, Conrad saying, as a Charger fan, I hope we talk about the Chiefs in the top 10 of the draft forever and ever. Amen. Yes, if we got back to the Kansas City Chiefs of my youth, of the Elvis Gerbach Priest Holmes, like, oh man, they're okay, but not really a threat, that would be fine. I would be okay with that instead of what's been happening with a dynasty in my division here over the last little while. Although it's not like the Raiders have been, oh man, Mahomes is there. Boy, that's really been the reason we've lost. But, you know, I can still complain about it. But yeah, for Kansas City, I think wide receiver is the way to go. I could see them trying to make a move for Ayuk, but we say this every year about them, right? Like, oh, well, Hopkins could be the one who goes there. Maybe it's Ridley who could go there. Maybe it's this guy. Maybe it's a Tyreek Hill reunion out in Kansas City. I think if one of the good receivers falls to them in the draft, then I could see them going that way. But Conrad, I think the most likely outcome is what you're saying there, is another edge rusher. Because, again, like this is a unique spot for them. And they are anticipating not picking here for a really long time after this. And so do you address wide receiver when, like, I don't think the receiver room is terrible. A full season with Rice healthy. If Kelsey comes back, even if he doesn't, Noah Gray is fine. Xavier Worthy, like that is an okay pass catching group. But, I mean, obviously Kelsey's aging out, but they're not taking a tight end 9. Jones is going to get old at some point. Karlaftis is going to need help. Like they are going to need help there. If you can backfill that way and add to what is already a strength with this defensive group, I could see that being the move there for Kansas City. So that would be the likely spot. I will just say, if we have gone this whole way and the player that a number of people have as the number 1 overall player in this draft at running back has fallen all the way to Kansas City, that is also a position of need for this team. So I could see them. It would be so them to just, yeah, well, we had one bad year and we came out with the number one ranked player on a lot of draft boards in the draft. That would be so Kansas City that I don't even want to think about that being a scenario. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals, another team that would like to not be picking here, but they're picking around these spots a little more often over the last little bit. They at least have some salary cap space, some crazy how, with $60.8 million on coming off of the books. Their needs have been their needs for a really long time. Anyone who can block for Joe Burrow and the quarterbacks there. Now, that got a little bit better as the year went on, but still obviously a significant problem is the offensive line. And they need anyone on defense. This was one of the worst defenses in the history of the National Football League this season, and they're probably losing their best player in Hendrickson. If it's me for Cincinnati, I get, like I just said, historically bad defense. I think we will see how the draft board goes. You have to go offensive line. Like, one player from this draft ain't fixing the defense. It will go from being one of the worst defenses in NFL history to just one of the worst defenses in the NFL. Like, it is, you are peeing on a house fire to try to put it out at that point. Not that you should just give up on it, but you can make a significant difference on the offensive line if you get one of the good ones at this part in the first round. Maybe it is a little too late. Here, maybe they do have to move up a couple of picks to try to get it, but that would be my priority. Try to piece together something competent in free agency on defense, and you still, like, the draft is more than one round. To me, I think you can make the biggest difference to your football team if you go with an offensive lineman in this spot, for Cincinnati. Conrad saying, I could see Ohio State safety Downs going here, as in a lot of draft boards, he's a top 3 athlete. You could, right? Like, that's a very, very good player that they could add. I still think, like, you help the offensive line. You now have a quarterback, your franchise quarterback, who's less pissed off and has a little bit more time to pick apart the offense. You add someone in the safety. He's okay. He is out there making up for a lot of the issues that the defense has, but I still think it can make a bigger difference on the offensive line. Now, if it went offensive line heavy early on and that isn't there, absolutely try to address things on the defensive side, because that's an issue too. But to me, offensive line needs to be figured out first point right away for Cincinnati here in this draft to help Burrow at least stay upright. Speaking of quarterbacks who need help staying upright, the Miami Dolphins are up next. They now have a coaching vacancy. They'll be picking 11th with negative $27.5 million in salary cap space. Their biggest need is a tricky one because we talked about it in the coaching changes part. I don't think Tua's going anywhere. We just talked about they have negative $27.5 million in salary cap space. If they cut Tua, they actually get even less salary cap space. Like, the dead cap for this year kills them on it. So I think they're going to at least keep Tua around and either try to rework that contract or figure something else out. But I think Tua's sticking around. I don't think they're in a spot where they're going to be drafting a quarterback anyway. So I do think that there are some issues that they need to iron out. Conrad nailing it. Speaking of teams needing an offensive lineman, the LOL Fins have to. Yes, offensive line. When the thing your team has been known for over the last several years are the concussion issues of your quarterback, even if the quarterback is to blame for some of those, I think you're contractually obligated to draft an offensive lineman in the first round every year. They also have some needs in the secondary that this defense, I think, has some talent on it. Getting a phone call. Maybe it's the Dolphins being like, hey, like, just be a little bit nicer to our guys, all right? So they can go to voicemail. If it was the Raiders, I'd answer, but if it's the Dolphins, we don't know. But yeah, like, the defense wasn't the biggest problem for this team last year. It was quite a bit worse than I was expecting it to be, but it would show up now and then. I could see them looking to add in the secondary a little bit later on in the draft. But yes, offensive line is a very big need for this football team, and thus I could see them making that move. Sorry, I just saw a tweet, pausing on the football thing, just saw a tweet from Ken Rosenthal. Major development in the Bichette market. The Phillies have a meeting set with Bo Bichette in the coming days, and as circumstances this offseason have changed, so has their interest level in the star infielder. So that's interesting and a little terrifying. Boy, I would really like it if there was a Kyle Tucker announcement here in just while this show's going on. That would be very great. But back to the football and back to Miami. Offensive line, obviously a need. They have a big decision to make with Tyreek Hill. I don't think he wants to be there. I don't think they want him there. So if they can do that in a way that saves them all of that salary cap space, then that's huge for them. And that opens up a lot. And I don't even think you would have to then go offensive, or I don't think you would then have to go wide receiver even. Like Jalen Waddle is a number one wide receiver, and you can piece together number 2 and 3 after that. HN and a couple of the other guys they have at running back are fine. It is offensive line that needs to be addressed, and then some help in the secondary there for the Miami Dolphins. Dallas Cowboys are up next. They are not going to have the luxury of drafting in the first round, with their pick anyway, for the next little bit. So this is a unique time for them. Luckily, just a ton of money to spend, as they have negative $79.4 million in salary cap space. Now, Jerry, I'm sure, will figure that out, but that's where they're at this particular time. If you watch the Cowboys for even a second this season, I think you know where we're going to go here with this football team. Dallas needs help defensively. They have a very solid interior of the offensive line. So for 1998, this team is fairly well built. For 2025, it's neat that you can kind of stop the run with this football team, but they have zero pass rush to speak of, which probably didn't help the secondary out. So like the pass rush, I think, has to be first and foremost for this team, because we just don't know what the secondary has, because quarterbacks were able to hold the ball forever and the secondary had to cover for forever. And that's a really bad spot to be in for a defense. So pass rush has to be the main priority for the Cowboys. We'll see what they do with George Pickens. I would be surprised if that was a marriage that continued. Like having a high-level receiver behind CeeDee Lamb, obviously with Lamb's injury issues, that helped this year, but the diva Pickens showed up at the end of the season and I think cost them at times, and I think you can get a cheaper option there anyway, and let Pickens go out and get his bag, I think, from Tennessee, and go with it that way. The defense needs to be the focus of this team. This was last year's Cincinnati Bengals, right? Like this offense, Dak Prescott leveled up this year, and it's a real shame. And I'm not the biggest Dak guy, but he leveled up this year, and it's a shame that Dak was that good on a team that was basically uncompetitive, aside from one blip around American Thanksgiving where it was, oh, could they? Oh no, never mind. This defense cost them football games and probably cost them a playoff spot this year, given how good the offense was. So that needs to be addressed. It is simple, plain point, period. Dallas needs to figure out everything defensively. Yes, to Conrad's point, the salary cap does not exist deep in the heart of Texas. Up next, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They'll be drafting 15th, if the draft were today. Obviously, a lot can change there. They're sticking with Todd Bowles, although they are going with the 5th offensive coordinator in 5 years out in Tampa Bay. They have $26.4 million to work with. I think a lot of the needs are on the defensive side of the football. They have a three-headed monster right now at running back that's pretty solid. The offensive line is fine. Like maybe you could adjust it. Baker got kind of hit a lot as the season wound down. But I think the offensive line there is fine. I think defensively they need some help. Obviously, again, the interior is great as long as Vita Vea is a professional football player. They're going to be fine. They have a couple of players potentially leaving from their secondary and the linebacking core in free agency. So there's actually a sneaky big amount of holes to fill on the defensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay. So I could see them going that route. Mike Evans' contract is up. We'll see what happens with Godwin working his way back. Igbuka kind of got worse as the year went on, but they have talent at least on the offensive side. For me, defense is the biggest need for Tampa Bay. It's a division that's right there for the taking. I don't think they're like 6 players away from fixing things on the defensive side of the football, but I think that needs to be the focus for Tampa Bay this upcoming season. Detroit is up next. Their estimated cap space is just a paltry minus $23 million. They're coming into this one, and this is an unusual spot for Detroit, given how the last few years have gone. But offensive line, I think, is the biggest need on this football team. They were 20th in run block win rate, 30th in pass block win rate. Not good. Not good for a football team that is looking to do some big things on the offensive side. So I think you have to address the offensive line in Detroit. Obviously, like, they don't need skill position players for the next 10 years. Like, they're set there for a while. Your mileage may vary on Jared Goff, but now is not the time to be doing that. They do need help defensively. The secondary was picked apart a little bit this year, and they need any kind of pass rusher that isn't Aiden Hutchinson. But to me, offensive line, again, that is where I think the biggest difference can be made with Detroit, is getting an offensive lineman and allowing this offense to get back to the elite level that it was. Minnesota is up next. They have negative $58.1 million in salary cap space. I said all offseason last year, all throughout the season this year, and will probably say all offseason this year, this is a very good football team. The quarterback was enough to get them close to a number one seed a year ago, and it was not good enough to get them even in the playoffs this year. So again, Minnesota is in a tricky spot. What do you do with J.J. McCarthy? Injuries hampered the season, but they were obviously not thrilled with what they got from the quarterback position in Minnesota this year with J.J. McCarthy. So do you roll it back with him and just hope that he can at least get the ball to Justin Jefferson a little bit more, that a full season with Addison is enough with him and a neighbor, with the duo they have at running back? Is that enough to just piece it together with the quarterback? I thought it was this year. I fell for it. I don't think it is. I think they have to address quarterback. I don't think they're going to be in a spot to do that right now. They could be a team that I could see, like, honestly, I think they would be such an amazing spot for Kyler. Like, give O'Connell Kyler Murray and see if they could figure it out with that. I think that would be a really, really interesting move for Minnesota to make. But I could see them being like a Mac Jones team or someone like that. Like, just basically try to do what they tried a couple of years ago when they hit the jackpot with Sam Darnold. Try to bank on O'Connell being able to do that again with Mac Jones or with a Kyler Murray or anything like that. I think you could have a very strong contender on this football with this football team if they could just have the quarterback position not be a liability. So Mac Jones, whatever. If the Raiders want to punt on Geno Smith, like, that wasn't great this year, but at least bring him into camp and give it a shot, and just kind of roll with it that way. But like, they are so close to being a really, really good football team. They do also need some help in the secondary. Harrison Smith, that was a whole lot of, oh, this guy's not playing for the Vikings anymore at the end of the season. So I'm going to assume that a replacement is needed there. So a couple of pieces in the secondary probably needed, and probably would be the direction that Minnesota would go in the draft. And I think trade or free agency is the way to address things at quarterback. But again, this is not a football team that has a lot of needs, and they're really good. Baltimore, next. They'll be drafting 24th overall. They have $8.4 million in salary cap space. So their biggest need, aside from a coach, is cap space. Lamar Jackson is going to be taking up 25% of this team's salary cap space going into next season. So if you could adjust that, I think that would help greatly. They need to figure out what Derrick Henry is. They did not use him in the same way they did a couple of years ago. And I thought it was to save him for this time of year, and then they didn't use him in the final drive against New England, and that probably cost them a playoff spot. So they need to figure out what they have with some of those pieces on offense that they were able to get an elite offense with a couple of seasons ago. Defensively, Kyle Van Noy is going to be a free agent. They just needed health on defense this year, but adding another pass rusher behind or along, whether it's alongside Kyle Van Noy and they bring him back or replacing Kyle Van Noy, that is, I think, something they're going to need to address. And Linderbaum is due a new contract. They may not franchise tag him. They may not, they decline fifth year option or whatever. They need help on the offensive line, whether he sticks around or not. I think they're going to need a little bit of help on the offensive line. Perpetually, they need, I think, a real true game breaker at wide receiver. I don't think, again, that's not at the top of the list for what they need. I think you do need to address what was a pretty bad defense this year. And yes, injuries hampered that, but still, if nothing else, draft some depth behind your starters. So it's not as much of a disaster when things go south this year. So a Baltimore team that I still think is just a heartbeat away from being very competitive again, but a few holes that they need to figure out. Now we get to the teams that don't have their first round picks in the upcoming draft. So that's great for them, considering this is the out of the playoffs discussion. The Atlanta Falcons, they don't have a first round pick, but at least they don't have cap space. Negative $12.7 million in cap space. They have a couple of things to work out. Drake London's due an extension, so do that. Like, he's very good. Kyle Pitts is a free agent now. He had easily his best season with the Atlanta Falcons this year, but it has been a bit of a tumultuous ride for Pitts. So do you bring him back, or do you just bring in random tight end X and save a bit of money there and try to piece some other stuff together? They put a lot of work into the pass rush over the last couple of seasons, which is why they're in this spot right now, trading a first round pick this year to get an extra one last year to help things out on the defensive side. But this is still a defense that needs some help, I think, in the secondary. Quarterback, we could say it's a need. It's not going to change there. Kirk Cousins' contract is still at a point where it would be significantly detrimental salary cap-wise to get rid of him. And he was okay-ish at the end of the season filling in for Michael Penix Jr. So it is not an ideal quarterback situation there, but it would be more expensive to fix it than to just leave it and try to figure everything else out. So I think that is a can that they will try to kick down the road as the season or the offseason progresses. I think a lot of the focus is going to be the secondary for this team. But again, interesting group. And lastly, we have the Indianapolis Colts. We know where Uncle Crashy sits on where this roster is at this particular time. Quarterback is going to be a need for this team. They have Anthony Richardson and a Achilles injured Daniel Jones. So they have nothing at quarterback. All due respect to Riley Leonard and what he did a season ago. But the team that, surprisingly, the team that brought in 44-year-old Phillip Rivers is in need of a quarterback this year. Bring back in Uncle Phil full time. I do think it's noteworthy that, hey, we got a quarterback who can throw the ball more than 15 yards down the field. The offense seemed to open up a little bit. I don't think Philly Riv is the fix out there, we will say. I don't think Riley Leonard is. And Daniel Jones, I'm not banking on him being 100% this year on a team that started the year so effectively out in Indianapolis. So quarterback, they're going to need to figure that out. But because you have Daniel Jones there, you can probably get him cheap on a 1-year-ish contract, given the injury situation. You're not trading up a bunch. I mean, you don't have a first-round pick to begin with. So, the quarterback is just out draft-wise. And then, would they be a Kyler destination? I don't think so. I don't think they would give up the assets to make that significant of a move. When they've just seen a highly drafted, more known for his mobility quarterback kind of not work there. Would they be a Mac Jones spot? They've tried to piece that together for a little bit now. Could they be that? Maybe. But they need to figure that out, and it's not a great offseason to do said figuring. The defense was better, but it still needs to be improved. They need some help on the defensive line and in that linebacking core. They made the move to bring in Sauce Gardner. Obviously, this year didn't go well for Sauce, but secondary is all right. But a little bit more athleticism at linebacker and a little bit of help in the pass rush, and I think the Indianapolis Colts can get there. Once again, atop a division that is looking suddenly very, very competitive. They do have some work to do, but starting with Jonathan Taylor and 3 really good wide receivers and one of the best corners in the National Football League, That's not a bad place to start if you're the Indianapolis Colts. It's just that pesky quarterback thing that needs to get solved. So we're going to do this after each round of the playoffs too, looking at the eliminated teams and what they need to do next. So I'm sure that everyone just agreed with everything that I said. We went over, I believe it's 20 teams, or 18 teams, nailed it on each one of them, I'm sure. But if you happen to disagree and you're watching live, throw it in the chat. Conrad, this has been a blast chatting with you in here. That's been so much fun. But yeah, if you have anything to say about anything I've said, let me know in the chat. Or if you're watching this after the fact, throw that in the comments and we can have a good old debate down there. We are streaming this live on a few different spots here today. No live stream tomorrow. Your boy is calling hockey and basketball tomorrow. So the next live stream is tentatively scheduled for noon Mountain Time on Monday. That is going to be the... That's going to be the next live stream, I can guarantee. And even then, guarantees around here are a little bit wonky. So keep an eye on my social medias at the bottom of the screen there if you're watching live, or linked in the description if you're listening in podcast form for all the updates around here.